Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever, however you are joining us. This is the I Speak Jeep podcast presented by SFJ4x4.com.
Nope.
Yep. My name is Neil with Simpson Family Jeeps. And I'm all jazzed up because Jeffrey's coffee smells amazing. I'm like Pavlov's dog, salivating here at the mouth.
And you're acting like you're all cool, sitting over there with the shades on.
I do have the shades on. Well, that's what, and as you mentioned, I think is hysterical. And oftentimes, if you've been tuning in, and you kind of understand our the new way that we're the format for the podcast. If you stay in after the cutscene, we are.
You'll find out why medically he has to wear sunglasses.
Why I'm wearing sunglasses, and also by medically, I'm probably my sense of smell has been heightened.
That's why you're drooling over the coffee over there.
Correct.
That my wife so graciously brought me because I forgot at home.
You should definitely give her, all the
lots
props.
of all the props.
And who are you gentlemen joining me in Grandma's Couch Studio?
Well, that guy drinking coffee over there is the producer Jeff Chabante. To a great
wow,
the Italian stallion.
Wow.
Scott after
Well,
years.
wait, there's more. Just got to stay in.
There's not more. No, there's the mad scientist over there who was not a painter today and should have been.
Yeah,
because it would have helped both you and Neil. Apparently.
I was gonna say we were shooting the American Hustle podcast, our sister podcast this morning, and the words were not wording well for me.
No,
and,
they weren't.
it's just letting you guys know now.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
literally the edit is gonna be interesting because you just were mid sentence and you just like took the headphones off and walked away. I'm like, he's done.
I was done. All
right.
The words were not wording. So
Giaga Jeepers is saying good morning. So
good morning.
He's
good morning.
First and so far only. Where is everybody?
I don't know. Everybody's in the grind.
I'm glad that he commented because I was actually sitting here staring at it going, there's nobody logged in yet.
Yeah.
This is weird.
Well, and it's valuable to take a moment to share with our listeners. If you're on the road, you're commuting, you're flying, you're driving truck, you're working on the assembly line, you're sitting in your fake scheduled meeting. We appreciate you prioritizing this podcast and being part of our Jeep family. That's so incredibly valuable. But you can join us live on Facebook or YouTube at 10:19 a.m. most Mondays, and we shoot from our lovely studio where our great listening group has helped fund the sign behind us, the I Speak Jeep neon, which is super cool. And, you can join in the shenanigans, get in the comment section and, and share with some other fellow, motorheads in the process. Mm-hmm. So what's today's topic and what should they do, Jeffrey, if they enjoy the podcast?
So today's topic is a continuation of last week where we're asking, where did the builds go? And last week we kind of recapped with SEMA and past trends, things like that. This week we're going to talk about those hidden treasures of Jeeps that are lost or the builds that have been lost or found. We've got some stories on both of those that we'll share. But before we get into that, like, subscribe, follow us on Patreon, become a Patreon member to get exclusive looks at some behind-the-scene footage, some videos that we just don't release to the public in general. Also, you can follow along through Patreon as a Patreon member on our Discord and join in the conversations that happen behind the scenes with some of our avid listeners.
Additional to note, our seasonal merchandise, and it is a one and done, folks. So we make these hoodies, these shirts, and they are selling very well. So get in line, get yours made. If you have already put your order in, we are waiting on the artwork to come back for us to be able to produce the shirts themselves. So as soon as that artwork's in and we can start making the hoodies, we will absolutely have them ready for shipping and sending them out.
I believe that should be very soon.
It should be any day now.
Yeah.
As the seasonal stuff is concerned, we do have the stuffed with adventure jerky.
Yes.
And that's obviously only good for before Thanksgiving.
And that's obviously only good because one person ordered it besides Scott, so it's losing the competition.
Whereas the
guys are letting me down. Where's
right?
all my Thanksgiving people?
Where's
I think there is
people?
a couple orders on it, honestly,
Yeah.
but not in comparison to
the any season for adventure, right?
This can't compete with a zombie.
The zombie
That's
chasing
right.
a turkey, chasing a Christmas tree equipped Jeep. So
That's right.
on your ugly Christmas sweater inspired background.
The race
So,
is on, and the race of the zombies winning.
it's pretty cool, folks. So and that's we're gonna produce that this year, and then not again. So if you like that any season for adventure hoodie, this is the time to get it, and you could have it potentially in time for our Christmas parade, which will be on Black Friday. We're going to gather here at our location at 324 Orange Street in Conneaut, Ohio. All Jeeps welcome. Got a Patriot, got a Renegade, got a Compass, got a Liberty, got a whatever. I don't care. Come on out.
I would love if somebody brought a Commander.
I would love if a Commander. That was my most disappointing favorite Jeep.
Absolutely.
I wanted it to be so good. And
It
just
had so
wasn't.
much potential. So into the comments again, real quick. Both Roy and Amanda Hill are saying good morning.
Good morning.
Brad Davis, good morning, fellas, and Nick and Linda Perry, good morning.
Good morning. So the Christmas parade, we gather here roughly 4:30. We hang out. We're in seasonal attire. You can be Thanksgiving inspired. You can be Christmas inspired. You can be whatever. We'll have the Christmas decor going, and we decorate our Jeeps with lots of lights and merriment.
And don't forget, that's free for you to attend. So
Correct.
just show up with your Jeep and have a good time.
100%, and we will have some light refreshments here available as well.
I heard the Grinch will make an appearance.
The Grinch will be taking pictures with people, and there'll be lots of merriment and fun in the process.
Somebody in our comments is asking, when are we getting the Gladiator 4xe?
You know what?
Mothership.
With the 4xE's current concerns, which are right now just absolutely plaguing Stellantis as a whole, local dealerships, and the ownerships of the 4xE owners. As much as I desperately desire the Gladiator 4xE, which I think is just the best platform for it possible, we are not going to get that one. We're not going to see that one anytime soon.
No, I don't think so either.
And honestly, I don't. Obviously, we're not going to have a V8 Gladiator production either anytime soon.
No, and does anyone remember what the choices were for the 2025 Gladiator engines?
To my knowledge, they thought that was sticking with the V6, but
Yeah, it was just a V6.
Yep.
and if they do that as good as they did the 24 launch, then I'll be stuck waiting.
Well, and the challenge with 2025 as a whole in the auto manufacturing world is the fact that our market prices have decreased exponentially. Our consumer confidence is kind of low when it comes to automobiles and pricing and interest rates. There's a myriad of a combination of stuff. That's a global situation, folks, not a domestic problem. It's global, and dealing with interest rates and supply and demand and over inventory production on a global scale. So therefore, it's actually driving prices down. We'll see Jeep's prices fall between $5,000 and $8,000 on average on their MSRP.
Yeah,
they got to get rid of old inventory before they can really land new vehicle production. With that said, we are expecting the Recon any time now. We've been teased with it. We understand it's in production. We understand that it's ready to rock and roll. I'm very excited to see a Recon in living color, and yet there is just absolutely whispers, and nobody seems to be, shouting from the rooftops about this smaller Wrangler-inspired EV platform.
Yeah. Should be interesting.
Should be. And I think that's the direction we're going. The challenge with the Gladiator specifically, which I've heard, is due to weight and range. They just simply cannot, in good conscience, at an engineering level, put the 2.0 assisted EV, which we see in the 4xE, so PHEV, is different if it's just the 4xE is a combustion engine assisted EV. They cannot put it in a Gladiator based on payload and potential consumer use. You hook that up to the camper, you're going to get about 3 to 5 miles towing is what their concern is. They just don't want to deal with that.
Yep. That's fair.
Anywho,
So on to the topic at hand. Where did the builds go?
where did the builds go? Because we're talking about where did the builds go, and obviously last week we left it with one of my favorite truck-inspired builds. Talking about the Gladiator, I had shared it near the. I could start singing for folks if they'd like.
Well, we gotta give them a second to get logged back in. So
that way we can kind of get running and rolling here again.
yeah, hopefully.
We had a bunch of viewers on that too. A lot of new people had joined us. That was really cool. I just got some notifications on my phone. A number of folks that had were watching that. Were names that are not exactly familiar. So, man, I really appreciate that.
Our best coffee deliverer just let us know we're better, so that's good.
That's right.
All right.
I got my coffee, and I got a message saying the audio sucks and redo it.
I was going to say, without
so-
Kristen, you know what? If your production qualities are sus in comparison to whether or not your wife is actively supporting the process. Thank you, Kristen, for
All
making
the things
sure
you do.
Yes, all the things you do.
Yep.
Are we good, Jeffrey? Are we?
We are. I think what actually happened is that we clipped the microphones too much because I just turned down all of our mics a little bit. We were in the red clipping,
Yes.
and I think it just overloaded the system, and that's why we went static.
That sounds like a production
That's
item
all-
to me. That
that's
sounds
all
like
Greek to me.
to me,
so
sounds like
that's
what
fine.
the producer is
To
supposed
me,
to
it
do.
sounds to me like I wasn't paying attention to the fact that you are more excited than usual, and you are louder in your mic than usual.
It's again, my senses are all over the place. I can't hear, I can't see. So my smell and my sense of loudness has got to be bigger and bolder than ever.
Yeah.
So anyway, we were
Yes.
talking about.
Let's just pull the mic away from you a little bit because that's what. There we go. Now we're gonna be better.
So we were talking about
I want to be right up on it.
the art of the build, and
Voice isn't that deep.
the prettier the build, the more impractical.
Sound
the
like
build.
me. Oh shoot.
We maybe that makes its longevity a little harder.
Sure.
So in the 60s and 70s, and I'll even say into the 80s, we had a lot of cartoony hot rod custom builds that pretty much were built to go to the National Roadster Show, to
Good Guys.
Good Guys, those kind of things. And they were to be looked at sort of improperly, tried to drive across the fairgrounds and then put back in its car trailer.
That's exactly what Hot Wheels were, right? I mean, we think about
100%.
our Hot Wheels and our Matchbox collections over the years.
Yes.
I mean, so much of our generation, kind of give or take 15 years, our minds are wrapped around these Matchbox cars.
Yes, 100%. So that gets us back into the more feng shui builds, the ones that actually can be used. And I started thinking about that is the biggest struggle with those is you have to pick what snapshot in time that build speaks to you, because those are ever evolving builds or parts and pieces. For example, we have our everyone knows it as the Hemi Jeep in house. That started out with just a bare bones 4-liter, but was still on 37, still on a custom chassis, still on custom long arm. And then he's continued over the course of another 5 to 6 years to hone and develop and change that build to now it is now getting a custom transmission. So on famous builds, you will find that people will fall in love with a certain era of that build because those cars continued to morph, change, kind of grow organically as the person that owns them's needs changed or the ability for what they wanted to do with it changed. Or if they wanted to go out to that show and keep getting attention, well, they have to make it look different. They have to change the color, change the body, change the chassis, change the engine. So you will have this metamorphosis of a build. But the sad part is, I don't know how I got that one.
He is slaying over there. I mean, first with feng shui, now metamorphosis. I mean, slay king, slay.
So you get into in a situation where you get a new build, but the old one has kind of been sacrificed in the making of that. kind of out of the Jeep realm, but it's something that I grew up kind of experiencing. And this one, I'm going to do my best, but I can't promise. There was a Merc in 1951.
What's a Merc?
A Merc is a Mercury.
Because you know that's an
Mercury.
irrelevant brand by today's standards.
I know.
Okay,
Makes me sad.
just there's a number of our listeners who are not gonna feel the Mercury love as much as you.
And that's fine, but it's a good example regardless. So the story goes is this GI got out of the service and he lived in California. He wanted something that was cool and got attention. So he in 1952 got a 51 Mercury. It was just basically a 2-door sedan. And then he went to the Barris brothers, which most people do know of, to have it customized.
I'm going to say no, most people don't know.
Okay. The Barris brothers were customization.
I'm over here nodding my head like, yeah, the Barris brothers, that's so cool. And Jeff's like, no, that's not actually.
So the Barris brothers were Sam and George Barris. Sam was the guy that kind of made the modifications. George was the guy that went and did the PR, kind of made the name, and they got a lot of fanfare for like the Batmobile, the OG Batmobile. They used to do some concept cars for Lincoln, that kind of stuff. So he went to them early on in their career and said, hey, I have this car. I want to make it cool. The only thing I want is it to be a pillarless hardtop, which was not a thing so much in 1952. So that was his only criteria. Other than that, they got to do what they wanted pretty much. And by some luck of the draw, the original conception of that car has been deemed one of the most beautiful customs ever. A lot of things that have been copied thousands of times originated with that car, like using 50s Buick side trim on a Merc was very common, chopping the top a certain amount, how low it was, skirts, that kind of stuff. That all originated kind of with that car.
So when you say it was that his only request was that it was pillarless.
Yes.
Typically, we refer to pillars. So folks who are listening, certainly in our Jeeps, our windshield frame is part of the A pillar, or the location on your standard unibody vehicle. That would be your A pillar, just outside the windshield frame to your door, to the front of your front driver, front passenger door. Your B pillar is going to be just over the opening of your driver's door,
right behind your shoulder,
of the front driver or the front passenger.
Yep.
If you're in a 4-door, then you actually have a C pillar, and so on and so forth. So when you say pillarless, his request was that
he wanted it to be a hard top, which is what that calls or stands for. That was a common thing in the late 50s, early 60s.
Okay.
Where you basically had a front pillar and a rear pillar and nothing in the middle.
So the B pillar is gone.
So it was all open air. You had glass there that interacted with each other, but no post. Obviously, for rollovers, that's not the best. But for that open airiness, that was a really common thing from the late 50s to the late 60s. So they did that.
And I guess real quick to bring it back to the Jeeps, technically Jeeps don't really have, our Wranglers really don't have a B pillar per se.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's kind of hard.
That's hard because we have the sport bar, the sport rollover
JKs
bar.
and JLs and JTs sort of do with the post in between the doors.
Right.
And that was a big, contention for a while.
Right.
Because it was not open enough.
Yeah, because of course your TJs, YJs, CJs, so on and so forth.
It was a piece of plastic.
Right. There's just absolutely nothing there.
Yes.
Okay.
So any which way, this guy's name was Bob Hirata, if I'm saying it right.
I love when you pronounce things.
I tried really hard.
You did.
Hirohata.
Hirata.
Hirohata.
So he was from there on.
I'm going to avoid from doing any type of...
you
Do it.
Nope.
Come on. Your senses are heightened.
Hard
You should be
pass.
able to nail this accent.
Hard pass.
Go ahead,
No
do it.
accents, no pronunciations from me today.
That car is known as that Mercury. Not saying it anymore. One time.
You did it so well after we figured out how to pronounce it
I
earlier.
did, and then time has passed. But anyway,
The moment is gone.
so why I think this is really relevant for this topic is because in the mid 50s, he daily drove this car, full custom car, had a Cadillac V8 put into it. So we're talking pretty, modified suspension, modified engine, full bust custom paint and body work. Back then they did leading and that kind of stuff on it. So it wasn't really made to be like pounded down the road, but that's what you did in the 50s. That's what you had to do. So it was a daily driver for him for a few years. Then it lost its kind of aura and he sold it off. Went through a few owners and it ended up on a used car lot in 1959. So only 8 years after this car was brand new and only 7 years after the build, when we're talking a full custom build at that point. And it was in magazines, that kind of stuff. It had been in a movie with a repaint. So we're talking a pretty
well
substantial
received,
car.
What movie?
I do have it, but I was trying to go off of my memory. So any which way, I will look that up and get back to you on that, since Jeffrey has to be a pain in my butt.
DJ.
Right?
Yep.
Right?
I'll take it.
Right, way to be, producer. I was excited. I was engaged in the storyline. I wanted to know it's on a car lot.
Yes.
I don't care what movie it's in. It's on a car lot.
Okay, I'm
I'm
ignoring
into
Jeff.
movies.
Ignore it.
Okay, so
I wanna know
1959, it's traded in on a used car lot, and a 16-year-old kid sees the car, knows about Barris Brothers. No,
I feel like that was a shot at me.
Do we know?
maybe.
Do we know what's happening? The original owner. What's happening in his life that he gets rid? We don't know. We have no idea.
If I remember, which again, this is off memory. He kind of just went off into life, and he didn't really do a lot more with cars. Like this was his kind of a flash in the pan.
Okay, we've had that. We've
yes.
actually had that as a customers of our own.
The car becomes more infamous than the owner.
ownership and the
Yes.
owner. Wild.
So, he purchased the Mercury for $500.
No. Of course, that was a lot of money in '59.
Yes. He
Jeffrey, do that while you're being a pain in the butt. Of what's $500 by 59?
59 standards.
Well, let me first say that the movie was Running Wild.
Nobody cares. There's not a single. You know what? If you're a listener and you gave a flying fig of whether or not that movie
Jeff
was
is here
called-
for you.
Jeff is here for you, and I need you to email Jeff at JEFF the letter C at sfj4x4.com and be
Tell
like,
him.
"Tell you did a good job.
Yeah.
you my man did a good job. I want to know that it was Running Wild.
So
You
anyway,
wanna know the value?
I want to know the value.
Okay, well, the value of $500 in 1959 is equivalent to $5,423.78 today.
wow.
So that would be like buying any of our premier, prestigious, big, gnarly, over-the-top Jeeps for, I don't know, a tenth of the price of what they're actually
Yes.
worth.
So
Amazing.
So this man was smart enough that he put it away, and after
This man or the 16-year-old?
the 16-year-old kept the car, he courted his wife in it. They say that's how he got his wife.
Huh.
I don't know. He put it away, and then in the 80s, he decided to have it restored.
Wow.
And at this point, we have this historic car, and nobody knows where it's gone. It is dropped
in
off
a
the-
museum.
Now it is.
Oh.
I'm getting there, Jeffrey.
Jeffrey. What podcast are you on this morning, Jeffrey?
I apologize for Jeff. It's like
Did I ruin your story?
no, but so anyway, so at this moment before he
I didn't know where it was,
did not
Jeffrey.
know where it was.
Between 59 and the 80s.
80s.
The point it was making
car had dropped
was
off the
20
face of the
years,
earth.
it was missing.
Yes, and
Not literally.
I wonder
where
what she
is
put
it
in the
right now.
coffee.
Right. Right. What
and why
is
I
it?
bring this up is because we have heard people talk about old race Jeeps, old builds,
Yes.
that kind of stuff. And the person that owns the Jeep or the car or the build knows where it's at.
Yep.
But they kind of like, it's kind of like the Noah's Ark kind of thing. Like, I know where it's at, but I'm not going to tell you where it's at kind
Sure.
of thing until I'm ready. Well, in the 80s, he decided that, okay, I have sat on this car for long enough. It deserves to be restored. So they
Yes.
restore it, and it was after 7 years of working on it, they chose to restore it to its original build that everyone kind of knows. And it was revealed at the Oakland Museum of California in an exhibit titled Hot Rods and Customs, Men and Machines of California Car Culture. And what really kind of got it more attention later, about 2015, it was actually able to go on Pebble Beach Concourse, which why that is important is Pebble Beach used to be just for stock builds, and we're talking super rare, like almost one of 3 kind of cars left.
Sure.
Those kind of builds, and they did not allow Hot Rods and Customs because they're modified to be part of that. And around 2015 to about 2020, you were seeing a resurgence of people agreeing like this Mercury, some Hot Rods, they're so iconic. They have been such an influence on all the cars after that they deserve to be on the green with these other special cars. The final thing, and I was looking here to see if I could find it. Jeffrey might have to bail me out.
I have.
It sold at auction.
Well, before it went to auction, it ended up in a museum in D.C.
Okay.
It was in D.C. In 2017, it got added to the National Historic Vehicle Register. In 22, it sold at Mecum in Kissimmee for how much?
It was a big number.
178.
178, like 178,000?
Yes.
It was
Not
over,
even close.
It's over $1 million, wasn't it?
Wow.
2,145,000.
Amazing.
So
What an
that
iconic piece of-
$2.1 million.
So this is
Amazing.
why I decided to bring up a Mercury on a Jeep show, is because this shows the entire life of a build. It has gone from, just a boring stock car, a year old, to a $500 piece of junk on the back lot of a car lot, to missing, to restored, and all kind of special awards.
Prestigious.
That word.
There it is.
There it is. And to change.
He used it all
I
up on
used it all up.
Metamorphosis.
He did.
But it literally changed the way, a huge respected car show does things, and now it is
And then it sold yet again,
for such a big number. That is what you hope a build
will
does.
do and
Yeah.
change so many lives and the culture as a whole.
And we have a couple of vehicles that we have similar stories that we can talk about. I wish Greg was able to be on this podcast, or willing to be, because
There
this
it is.
episode, he would absolutely bring up the Doom Turtle, which was a massive tank build, and a YouTube influencer that he's been following called Fat Electrician did this great video on it. But it is, more than 2 times the size of any other tank ever made, and it was lost for years.
Yeah, and it was one and only of its kind, and it was left out in the field, and they accidentally found it. And then the Army was like, "Thank you for finding our tank. We didn't know where it was."
Yes.
And then they restored it, and now it is in the museum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy how builds like that can just
Be
disappear.
lost.
And it's interesting
Literally
because
lost in a field.
because what's
The thing went all of 8 miles an hour top speed.
right.
Yes.
Well,
How do you
it's-
lose that?
It's so fascinating to me because in the moment, especially our reputation has grown with these projects and builds. Now we're happy to do general service and general maintenance and kind of fine tuning stuff, but in the moment of doing project management for these big builds, it seems huge and encompassing both for us and for the customer that we're serving in that process. And
Right.
it's so fascinating because we lose sleep over it, and we're
Yes.
trying to leverage the world and all of our logistics to serve this moment. And then, kind of in our American hustle topic of life goes on, like a couple years later, life goes on. Now,
Correct.
for a number of customers who, as you mentioned, the Hemi Jeep, he continues to hold on to it and to keep
Yes.
picking and enjoying. We have a customer years ago, you did a CJ7. I know factually that one is still very much in
that's a
his
lifer.
lifeblood.
Yeah.
But we have people like Found It
Yep.
that is more of a transactional or momentary
For that
situation.
customer, it was more about the metamorphosis of the build.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's really kind of what you're talking about with
Yeah.
your Merc story. But before we get to that one, and I do want to share that one because it's kind of
I think that's a really
fun
fun story.
I am going to bring up, I had teased that this past weekend, whether you are a sports fan or a car fan, we actually saw the resurgence of a classic 90s build called Crew Cut. So over the weekend was the Jake Paul, Mike Tyson fight, which, had just a myriad of people, kind of just yammering about. But for the car people, and honestly, I didn't watch it and I don't care. You know what I mean? Realistically, right? I was like, whatever, like I don't care.
Yeah.
But I got to be honest with you, when I saw Crew Cut came into the picture, when it started making all the social media rounds, I was like, oh my God, I remember that truck, right?
Yeah.
So then all of a sudden, I went from being completely apathetic about the Paul Tyson fight to like, here, I'm for this. So it actually says, I grabbed a snippet here. If you saw the Tyson Paul fight on Netflix, then you saw a green Chevy dually that Jake Paul came out to the ring in. That green lowrider dually is known as the Crew Cut dually. It's a 92 Chevy C350 3500 dually. It was the pinnacle of Master Image Customs' impact on the custom truck scene during the 90s.
That one has the Cadillac front end.
Has the Cadillac front end,
Yep.
and it's a convertible,
Yes.
right? And then
Again,
obviously
we saw copied over and over.
and that's exactly
over.
it, because it says it was on the cover of almost every truck magazine in its time. It was even on some of the non-truck. It was just because it captivated an audience of it's kind of that Merc where you took something that it was supposed to be. It was this plain Jane, regular, everyday sedan of sorts.
Yes.
And you made it into something that had amazing appeal, which you took basically a work truck, 3500 at that time. Nobody thought they were cool except for me.
Yes.
And you slammed it, you chopped it, you caddied the front end of it, and said the truck disappeared in the early 2000s and was thought lost until over a decade later. Honest to Pete, Richard Rawlings bought it at an abandoned auto auction.
He's actually good for a lot of that, of finding that.
He really is. I mean, the production audience makes him seem like a blundering idiot.
Yes.
But you don't get to his level.
That's how he makes money.
Correct.
One of those, you just made me think of it. Chip Foose.
Sure.
Most people, I don't know if Jeff does, knows who Chip Foose is. His dad, Sam Foose, built a fully custom car. It was, again, thought lost. And Richard Rawlings, also found that. And Chip went and bought it from him.
Nice.
And it was untouched. It still had the same tires on it that
That's so
he built
crazy.
it in the 70s.
Well, and I just think what an interesting, how captivating it is for us as a society as a whole, that we have this, one of the biggest entertainment fights of our current history.
Yes.
And a large portion of it, I mean, his come out was in this lost, now discovered custom build, which, was, as you mentioned, one that kind of changed a car scene as a whole.
Yep.
Additionally,
I think he did that really well because it played off the fact that Tyson helped Paul become who he was in the boxing scene.
I agree. I thought it was actually a really cool, he, of all the things that he could have hyped himself up in, or all the entertainment goofy pieces that they did leading up to the event, this one seems odd to me, misplaced, and because of that, almost so pointed at the fact that hey, we took this 90s icon, and it was a vessel to the now.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was.
And you know what I mean? So that's, like I said, I didn't care. I was completely apathetic until the truck made it into the conversation, and I was like, oh, now I'm engaged.
Vested.
I'm vested, right? But
and then the fight started and you lost vested.
I didn't even.
Yeah.
So Like I said, I only saw the truck afterwards, and I started looking into it. But you had mentioned as you prior to you starting this conversation about the Merc, this idea that sometimes we have to reinvent our vehicles if we're going to retain them. And it actually made me bring it back to the Jeep specific market of synergy manufacturing. And I think it's really interesting about synergy manufacturing. And that should be a name that most of our listeners have seen once or twice in our community. And synergy years ago was known for their 1-ton performance parts, right? So, if you were doing your big heavy duty steering, big heavy suspension, ton axles, stuff
Links,
like that,
that kind of
links, all
Yep.
that kind of things, right? And as the JK market kind of blossomed and exploded with bolt-on components,
Yeah, their market kind of.
synergies, kind of seemingly, at least for us at the retail service providing side, seemed to kind of retract a little bit. They became part of the white noise, and so they would show up to these shows with this tunned out, JKU, and it was super cool. And they wheeled it all over the nation, and it'd go to have this set up at their booths and everything. And in the beginning, it captivated all the attention.
Yep.
But then eventually, as all the other market caught up with where Synergy was at, it became white noise.
Yep.
Now, for whatever reason, whoever owned it, the investment that they put into it, and I do think it, from a business ownership standpoint, it was a sound investment to reinvest in that Jeep, right? Yep. Because I think there's a number of businesses, certainly from the consumer standpoint, I think you look in at businesses and you're like, oh, they should own every model of every Jeep. They should just keep
feasible.
Yeah, they should just keep going out and buying the newest model and working on it. It's just not feasible. Our budgets, whether they be household or professional, are not all that different than yours. We still have to be mindful or conscientious of it. So,
and at minimum, if you're going to go out and get that newest Jeep or newest model, then you have to get rid of the old one.
You have to get rid of the old one.
You have to sell it off to get that capital back in to then produce stuff for the new one. So that's why you see these builds kind of,
which is like last week we talked about Kenny Hawk.
Yeah.
Doing exactly that.
Where did that go? Exactly.
So the Synergy situation, this whole lead up was they did the most ridiculous city skyline wrap on it. It had just like this digital camo, kind of hot colors, all this kind of craziness. And then they got 22s or 24-inch deep dish tires and wheels that everybody hates, and wrapped them in rubber band 42s or something.
Yep.
And it's the exact same Jeep. Did nothing different to the suspension other than a little bit of paint.
Yep.
Wrapped it and did these 22s, 24s. And took it to the shows, and all of a sudden they were relevant again.
Yes.
And I had a great opportunity to talk with one of their reps a couple of years back at a Toledo Jeep Festival. And he was like, it was just the weirdest thing because we became white noise. Everybody kept glazing over our Jeep. And then all of a sudden, all we did was a hot wrap job and goofy, impractical wheels and tires.
Yep.
And now everybody's... everybody's,
you hit the reset button.
You hit the reset button.
Yep.
It's brand new again.
But that therefore meant the old build was kind of no more.
Of sorts. I mean, of course,
Yeah.
the build quality is still there. Synergy's
Correct.
products are all still on display. It was just the way that the market as a whole consumed it anymore.
And the hardest part about that is you never know what's going to be iconic, what's going to be the next build that's going to garner that kind of attention. Like somebody wanted with your truck build, someone was like, "Oh, I've never seen somebody put an Escalade front end on a truck before. It bolts on. We'll do that." They didn't know that was then going to become iconic, and for the next 10 years, we're going to see everybody do that.
Yes.
No,
Everybody in the trucking scene.
And it very well could have been one of those situations where they did it and everyone's like, why are you doing that? That's terrible.
I guarantee at first.
And at
everybody
first that happened.
Yes.
Yes.
I guarantee
100%.
at first everybody, it was full of haterade in there, and then
Yes.
all of a sudden the whole market pivoted to that. And it is kind of like the stance and stretch line, which I'm not condoning, I'm not jumping
Yeah.
behind, but we see our big truck market I mean, and as a guy who's into big trucks, I was always like, oh, you got to have 7 inches of sidewall for, you know, heat dissipation running down the highway and this much air pressure. And all of a sudden, you know, these characters came out with these big rigs, you know, dualies and any type of big heavy duty diesel. When I say heavy duty, I do mean, you know, consumer truck with what we would call rubber bands. You know, they got 2-3 inches of sidewall, and we're like, oh, you can't tow your gooseneck. And everybody hated them at first. And now that whole industry is running those wheels and tires.
Yes.
And it's just like, it's kind of comical in how we react to these market trends. Now, you were talking about, you know, predicting trends and you know, kind of, you don't know what's going to be exactly iconic or how things line up. I think it's a great segue to Found It, which was a 1978 Wagoneer that we had the pleasure of redoing.
Yes.
And you were obviously the, per your role here, the kind of the chief restorative artist of it, if you will. And that particular customer happened, he's a real estate guy by trade.
And he was asked to go and look at this property. The house was a total loss. It was like falling in on itself. But on the property next to the house was this garage. And for whatever reason, the garage fared far better.
Yes.
And in this garage, with the canoe still in the rafters and 10 inches of dust on it, was this Jeep Wagoneer. And it was a limited, so it had, you know, pretty nice interior, that kind of stuff. And basically somebody had parked it in the garage, you know, hung up the keys, turned off the lights for the last time, and just never came back.
Yep.
And he was able to, you know, being in the real estate, he knew contractors, he knew some stuff, and he was able to work a deal with the owner of the property to say basically, like, I will help clean it up, I'll make it the property sellable, but I want the Jeep. And he actually found us because he was looking for a set of keys for it, because of course the keys got hung up and nobody knew where they were.
Sure.
And so of course we did what we do, and we did a very light, really cosmetic wise restoration. We did do the headliner, we did do a little bit of cleanup in the interior, but it actually didn't need a lot mechanically, though, because you know, everybody knows the worst thing you can do for a vehicle is let it sit, and you weren't expecting to let it sit. So all that kind of stuff needed refreshed, but we did that.
Well, I'm going to stop you. I mean, his question or his expectation for us was that he wanted to drive it back and forth to Florida.
Yes.
So, I mean, he came in circa, I don't know, 2020, 2018, 2019, somewhere between 18 and 21. I don't know.
Too many Jeeps ago.
And he came in and he said, I want to take this 1978. I want to drive back and forth to Florida.
Yep.
And this was right as the murmurs, and what jogged my mind on this one is the murmurs of the re-release of the Wagoneer line by Stellantis, right? And so everybody is getting a little bit of full-size fever as far as the Jeep market is concerned. And this individual, who is not a Jeep guy by trade, in fact, the most auto scene he ever had was King cars or Corvairs.
He liked to dip in and out of things he thought was cool. So he had some European sporty cars.
Right, some MG stuff. Right?
He had some, I think he might have had a Porsche or a Mercedes or something like that at one point. I don't exactly remember. But, you know, he kind of dipped his toes in, I'm going to try this a little bit. But he was never... like me and Neil, we fall in love with the vehicle, and it's pretty much with us till death. He was not that. He was like, I'm going to play with this for now, and then something else is going to be shiny and pretty, and this will go off.
And the thing about him is that he wanted to see some return on investment.
Yes.
He did not want to be upside down per se.
Which,
you know,
originally made me nervous because I always give the pep talk to all of our classic builders that you don't do this for profit. You do this because you love the vehicle, and it's very hard to see a profit. But in this case, I was wrong, and I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an interesting conversation on managing it because he managed his expectations as we managed the project. And I think that's a big thing that set this specific job aside versus others, because there were certainly things that we could have done a full paint job, right?
Yes.
And we obviously didn't do anything, but a partner business that we associate with did some paint correction.
Yes.
Did some small batch.
Just what it needed.
Just what it needed. Little bare, little spot treatment stuff.
Yes.
He didn't pull up the carpet necessarily.
Nope.
He didn't take the interior out. He didn't go hog wild,
Yes.
right?
No, it gave it that original look and feel while being refreshed.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And you did some things with the engine, made it fuel
So the
injected.
engine was completely rebuilt,
Yes.
right? And so that was we did a complete rebuild of the engine. We did an overhaul of the transmission.
Mhm.
All the seals were aged and brittle and hard. So we went ahead and resealed all that, re-gasketed everything. Actually, the clutches and stuff in that were in good shape, so we were able to reuse it. We refreshed the Quadratrack transfer case. It was actually the last year for the Quadratrack.
Mm-hmm.
And
We did a conversion on that one eventually.
eventually we did do a part-time conversion because he was surprised by the 10 miles of the gallon uphill, downhill, or with a tailwind, which all full-size Jeep owners will know and
Yes.
love.
Yes. Yes.
So we were able to do that. We did do a very small, appropriate lift on it, but nothing too crazy. And
No, it
again,
just kind of got it up and gave it that kind of iconic stance that most
Yes.
people appreciate versus kind of that low slung station wagon appearance, right?
We made sure the back window, the power back window worked. That kind of stuff. Made the headliner new because obviously that had fallen down.
Yeah, I love that one because it really was. Because what eventually happens to that, and I'll just kind of cut to the skinny here,
Yeah.
is that it eventually sells 3 times at Mecum.
So we went to. Let's start with we went
Well,
to.
it sells well. Maybe I should just stop my statement there. Is
Yeah.
that it sells well, and that's the big difference. Is it sells well because there is return on investment for each person involved in the process.
Correct.
Yes.
So go ahead. Now you can give us.
I
our
was going to
timeline.
say, so we actually were asked by this customer to try to help sell it so he could make that profit.
Yeah.
We went to Bantam and had it in the booth at Bantam with hope that it would sell that weekend.
I knew I'd sell it.
With
Let's be honest.
expectation.
There you go.
Expectation that it would sell that weekend.
Mm-hmm.
It sold the first day.
Yes.
Yeah. I had 3 offers day one.
Day one, 3 offers. One guy said, "Hey, can you hold it for me and I'll be back?" And we're like, "Look, we already got a couple offers." He's like, "I'll be right back. Here's my check."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that was what started that process of it selling well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's as a testament to that owner at that time. He was like, "What? Why? It's that many offers? Well, maybe we should ask more." And I thought, well, you know what? This is one of those situations like it's never going to be perfect for anyone in the
No.
process, right? This was.
And it was one of those situations where the market was starting to get excited, but
Yes.
it wasn't quite on fire yet.
Yes.
The person that bought it was kind of in the right place at the right time, and they were able to kind of get in right and get out really right.
Well, and I
with
think that
some enjoyment. But he was about a year premature before really
before the
excitement.
fire, the excitement, and the funny thing is the individual who purchased it at Bantam was actually part of a family who does this kind of professionally.
Yeah.
They are known on the East Coast for selling classic cars and rare one-offs and custom automobiles and stuff.
Yeah.
So by the for him purchasing it, and
He's employed to find them.
he's employed to find these.
So yeah, it was found again.
Yeah, and then to then the beauty that he did after about a year and a half of using it because he took it to Florida himself.
Oh
and-
yeah, he's like, "I'm absolutely going to enjoy this before flipping it." Like
I mean,
all his other ones.
he put 5,000 to 7,000 miles on it, if I remember.
I'm just going to jump in comments real quick because we got someone saying hi. Connor, hi.
Hey, Connor, and he used it, and then we caught wind that it was going to Mecum Auto Auction,
Mm-hmm.
and so we decided to go and support the sale of it.
Yep.
Kind of promote it and talk about it, and that owner was super cool with that. Loved the idea of it. We actually ended up taking another Jeep there as well to try and move that one at auction. But the unique thing about Found It under that new ownership was that he presented this storyline.
Yes.
He took the functional piece, he took the finding of it, and he rounded it out into the most like romanticized.
Yes.
He had a little picnic. Well, and so our customer actually had supported the little picnic basket with all
Yes.
the paperwork and everything in it. But he actually made like a little picnic scene with the back tailgate down and all the paperwork was out, and had like, it really made you kind of nostalgic for the more simpler days of the auto
He
community.
rounded out the package. And there was quite a bit of documentation with it, but he went and found all the brochures and
Of
all
that
the
era,
original
yes.
stuff for that. He kept the cooler, but added like the chair and the cup and all the other stuff that helped complete the story. So you could easily walk through that auction. And one parts I took away was there was a lot of vehicles there. So if you had the coin to go to there and be to buy, you had to get their attention somehow.
Yes.
So it just made it very cohesive and very easy to see yourself, in this vintage SUV at the beach, having a picnic with your family,
Yes.
with the iconic part of it. And we saw that pay dividends with the auction number.
Sure. Because he sold it that week or weekend. And then it goes to, we believe, an individual in Kansas or something.
To clarify, he sold it for a decent profit.
Yes.
Very decent.
Yeah.
And then it goes to an owner. That person has it for another year or so.
Yep.
And we see it wind up at the auction yet again.
Yep.
It's sold for yet another decent profit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see how these builds, kind of progress in the process. And we've had ours where it was lost and then it was literally found. It was named Found It. We don't actually know why some of these vehicles, the Doom Turtle or the Merc, or why do they go into, I don't want to say a hiding, but into storage. And how do we lose track of them? And it reminds me of a story where when I was doing a lot of picking before we had such a heavy service demand, and I caught wind that there was an individual who had a couple vintage Jeeps kind of along their pasture line, right?
Mm-hmm.
And rotting away into into the field or into the trees. And I used to love buying those. They were pretty cheap. And for our vintage Jeeps, we could usually get a few parts off of them.
Yep.
Clean something up. Had some opportunity to
And
repurpose.
the best part, we would get to go and talk to that individual and get the story of the vehicle, how they used it, why they kind of parked it, that kind of stuff. And that almost was as good as the rest of it.
Absolutely. And in my opinion, it really was the kind of the crown jewel of that process. Now, I showed up at the gentleman's house, and he doesn't expect me to be there, right? And he has no idea who I am or why I'm showing up. And I pulled in, and I talked with him, and I remember this pretty clearly, that I was in kind of nowhere, Western Pennsylvania, and it was on my way home, and per the usual, I was late to get home to my wife, and so I was just passing through, and I had my kid with me, and this guy was not happy that I was just cold calling his house to, ask about these Jeeps. And he said, well, I don't know, they're not really for sale, and I'll do something. It wasn't immediately curt, but he wasn't welcoming either necessarily. So I said, I understand that. I'd just like to talk with you a little bit more about them. Can I come back at a time when is a little bit better for you? I don't want to impose on you right this minute.
Yep.
And he said, you know what? That's fine. I probably still don't want to sell them, but you can come back. And he gave me a day or two, that I could come in the next couple days. So as the next couple days came around, and that time frame that I told him that I would come back, I came back and I met with him outside again in the front yard. He was only slightly more welcoming at this point. And we talked briefly about the Jeeps. He said, I still don't want to sell them. I said, well, that's fine. I appreciate that. You kind of tell me why you have them. And maybe when you're ready, I'll be here. As just a fun key piece for people. I've bought a lot of guys after the dream has died for them. I've bought a lot of their stuff. You know what I mean? So whatever. So I was like, that's fine. Just let me know when you are ready. But, how did you get them in the first place? He said, well, I've always loved cars. I've actually started working these jobs when I was young. And, I bought a car. It's kind of the Merc story of sorts, if you will.
Yep.
And he was a really cool dude. Unfortunately, his wife had passed, 7-10 years prior to us talking. He was pretty lonely, and he really didn't like what he saw going on in the world and in the grand scheme. And so legitimately, he told me he spends most of his days in his chair by himself watching old black and white movies. And it was just a really interesting cat. And he said, well, yeah, actually I have a nice car collection as well. I don't show many people, but if, I've shown, Neil Simpson has shown this much effort. He goes, I guess if you'd like, I'll show you. And I said, well, I would love that. That's what I'm here for, So he walks me into this, decent looking little barn. And we walk in and there is 7 cars total, a whole, smattering. He had a Jeep and he had a number of other vehicles, but most specifically, he had a Buick from either the 20s or the 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, actually, of all the ones that he loves this one. He had a couple old Fords, and he said he loves this one the most. And it was just gorgeous. It was a piece of art, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, tell me more about it. Like, I'm enamored. I am so in love with all of this, And he said, yeah, you know what? I'll just, on a Sunday, he's literally the guy who just fires one of these up and he goes for a little Sunday cruise. And again, he lives out in the middle of the sticks,
Yep.
And he just cruises in these cars. So he said, this one I love. And he goes, well, it's actually got a funny story. If you'd like to hear it, I'll tell you. I said, well, I'm here, dude. You're not selling me anything. So I'm just here to listen at this point,
Yeah.
He said, well, when Buick discontinued in 2010, they had a celebration of the brand for, 2010, 90 years, whatever Buick was, And I want to say this was like a 27 or a 31 or 32, something real special. And he said, yeah, well, I'm in a couple Buick clubs. Of course, the hot rod associations used to be, used to write cards and you'd send it in and they'd send you a registry back and you would tell them what vehicles you had and all that kind of stuff. Anyways, I got contacted by this individual, said, hey, we're discontinuing Buick as a whole, but we would like for you to bring your car and display it. And he thought, well, that's cool. He's been to Buick shows before, so why not
to ruin a good story? But Buick still exists. So is you sure?
Well,
it
was relaunched.
Sure, it wasn't an Oldsmobile?
Nah, it was Buick. It was relaunched.
Okay.
It was relaunched. Buick was relaunched. Remember, they killed it in 2010. You don't remember that? That's fine. So, anyways,
I had to because somebody's going to do it too.
So he goes in for this. This event and he trailers it up there and he drives down Woodward and he's following the directions and he shows up and he said there was trucks and trailers everywhere. There was a crowd everywhere. And
they weren't expecting
just so you know,
to drive it.
And I feel like I need to now defend myself. It was when they closed the plant in Flint, Michigan.
Right.
I'm still right.
Okay.
Right.
This is why I'm just gonna. That's all right. So
still somebody was going to do it. So it's good we do it on
that's
the
fine.
air
We'll do
anyway.
it. We'll do it. That's fine. So he goes there and there's this huge crowd and he shows up and he says, he just kind of hobbles up to somebody. He doesn't know where to go and blah, blah, blah. And we know how that is going to these shows.
Yeah.
And he talks to somebody and he radios. And they said, what's your name? And he tells them a name. He's like, nah, they're looking on the list. They don't see him. I say, sir, you don't have access to come in here. He said, I was told to come. I don't know. I just received a letter and said they wanted me to come. And I said, yes. And that was it. So radios, it goes, okay, well, let me talk to this, radios up the chain of command. Next thing you know, he said, that person that he was speaking to, like their face, like a light shone across their face. And they were like, oh my God, sir. Okay. You need to actually go over here, blah, 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 blah. They unload his car. And next thing you know, he said it was like Moses parting in the Red Sea because everybody moved. They moved every truck, every trailer, everything. And he fires up his car, and because they were like, "Well, sir, we'll get a team over here to move your vehicle for you." He was like, "Why would you move it for me? He's like, "I drive it. I drive this, you know." And he's like, "I'm gonna drive it over there." And they said, "You're gonna do what?" He goes, "I'm gonna drive it." And they said, "Okay, well, please follow me, sir." And he drives it, and he drives out onto a red carpet. He drives all the way up to the front of the main stage, and he drives it up onto the main stage onto a turntable, where it then proceeds to be the centerpiece, because it is one of 3 original of these cars made at this era by X, Y, and Z owner of Buick at that time.
Yep.
And he was just
an old guy with
just
an
an
old
old
car.
guy with an old car who
Yep.
loved it dearly, you
Yep.
know? And it was just the sheer fact that he was registered on a national registry with the VIN
Yep.
that whatever motor vehicle association that had, sponsored this going away party at that time had recognized him. And then he just drove it back off at the end of it, you know what I mean? But for that weekend, for that moment, he was it was the crown jewel of the event. So
That's awesome.
all right, that was a long story, but a good one for me to end this one on. Hopefully, there's some really cool projects that you know of that that you've got your eye on, that you drive past. I think a big shout out to our over the road truck drivers. Over the years, you guys have called in to me and gave me all the best tips across the country, and of which some of them I have actually kind of been able to act upon. And so I've always appreciated, because you see it in that abandoned garage or that driveway or whatever as you're driving past. I'm always amazed when guys call and like, yeah, on 86 in Texas along the road here, and I'm like, oh my God, like I guess I would never have known it was there. But hopefully, you know where a cool project is, or maybe you yourself are sitting on one. We'd love to hear about that. You can email us, as I've already put out there before. If you want to give Jeffrey the kudos for
Please annoy Jeff
for jumping in on something, it's jeffc@sfj4x4.com, or you can hit us up on our text only number 440-855. 2100. I almost botched that one.
So you can also email to me to make fun of Neil for not being able to say our text only number.
Yeah, all my words are not wording. and jump in. Let us know how things are going for you, where you're at, and you're listening. Additionally, if you're in Antarctica, we need that download. So maybe if you're planning a light vacation over the holidays.
and useless trivia. You cannot VPN or whatever the heck that is to do that.
VPN.
Yeah.
That too.
Yeah. So you actually have to be there.
Perfect.
I'm confused by how he knew that fact.
I don't know. Until then, Jeep on.
Jeep on.
Jeep on.
All right, I'm bringing the Buick thing back up. So you were employed selling cars at that time. Was that where your fervency was, or because you weren't at a GM dealership, right?
No, I was at a Chrysler.
You're at a Chrysler.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chrysler Jeep. It was before Dodge was in the same dealerships across the country. They still had a separate Dodge lot at that time. So I was Chrysler Jeep specific, and I don't remember them going out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was part of it was part of what was on the table. Just for a fun fact, it was part of what was on the table during the restructure and the bailouts.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And
from the Great Recession.
So that was actually it would have been a couple years after I was off the lot. So
that's what I was wondering.
It was,
that's why I really am bringing it up, because I was trying to gauge when you were because I know there was some formative Jeep Chrysler stuff for you at that time.
Yep.
My sister was, so interestingly enough, and somehow my sister was trying to sell cars unsuccessfully, because it was just,
it's a different world.
It's a different world. It's a different world. And she was with an auto group that had a GM division, while she was actually over the Jeep Chrysler side, kind of like yourself.
Yeah.
There was also a GM division. And so I remember, and this was obviously when Buick went out in the Great Recession. They were, you know what, I got to be honest with you. I really genuinely think that was an easy kill off for GM. They had already done a lot of shenanigans, and I think they used it as like well, we're going to get rid of this line. And they never Like we're talking about the Great Recession was 07, 08, right?
So
10.
the story I was told is why they actually didn't kill it off is because Buick is one of their flagship brands overseas. Like if you are in the Asian market,
Yeah, it's like a Mercedes.
to have a Buick is a status symbol.
Right.
So they actually have a long wheelbase Buick, if I'm not mistaken, for that market, because that's again another thing they like for the when you're driven around, you have to have more space in the back. So
Yes.
there's long wheelbase.
Yes, as opposed to a
models.
limo. Well, I think it's one of those smoke and mirrors things that companies do, you know. So just kind of a fun trying to put your experience.
Yeah,
with
and I'm
my
trying to place
sister's
the
experience.
exact year that I was there because it would have been it was before the recession.
Oh, okay.
It was before 08. But
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you the
And
exact
I don't remember
year.
when my sister was there, but see, the thing is, we had a LeSabre, and that thing was one of the best cars I've ever like. I can't say enough good things about that early 2000s LeSabre, and then they got rid of that for Rendezvous or
Lucerne.
Lucerne. Blech. All right, what'd you do this weekend?
I had a heck of a time just building again. You
Yes.
know, I joked with my wife that apparently I'm being contracted to build everything lately.
Perfect.
So we built a nice pergola style canopy.
I offered to come help. I would not have been a great help, but I offered to come help.
Well, the internal joke here was that we didn't want you to slow us down, but you know.
Oh,
It's actually doing you a favor because
Honestly, I really was worried about the fact that you did just have the eye stuff that we're going to talk about done, and I didn't. You know, you should be
and-
working around.
unbeknownst to Jeff, it was basically a rock quarry. So he
Oh.
had to short of dynamite to get the posts in the ground.
Oh, that was a mess.
yeah. So it was best that we didn't do it.
So anyways, so we built that, had a good time doing that, and then Sunday was a scheduling error in my part because the Steelers were playing the Ravens, one of the most epic games in
For a
NFL.
Steelers fan.
For a
yeah.
Steelers or Ravens fan. I mean,
Sure,
very,
yes.
very big rivalry. And I scheduled our board meeting back in July, mind you. I scheduled it before the schedule came out for
You
NFL.
never know. You never know.
For 1 p.m., which was the start time of the game.
Yep.
So I purposely had to position myself at our venue where we were doing our board meeting so that I couldn't see the TV with the giant 80-inch TV display of the game. Had to have my back to that so that I could focus on
Oh,
our
dear.
nonprofit board meeting.
Yes. Yes.
Which was, great time, good success.
And your nonprofit thanks you for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry your golf game was interrupted.
But I got to watch. My wife, who's amazing and brought me coffee this morning, and then told us that our audio sucked. She also drove home so I could watch the remainder of the game on my phone.
That's
You're a hot
awesome.
mess.
Yeah,
That is awesome.
yeah, which was a really good game to watch.
It was. Well, I didn't watch it, but I watched all the highlights of
Yeah.
it. What station was it on?
Paramount.
Don't tell me that. I could have watched it. That's all right.
Honestly, I was wondering if you were still using my Paramount to watch football.
I'm definitely not going to implicate myself in any way, shape, or form.
Well, the reason I wondered was because I logged into Paramount and there was a couple movies that said continue watching or TV shows. I'm like, that's not something anybody in our house watches.
Huh?
Yeah.
Can't wait to hear what that is. Scott, what did you do this weekend?
I just
Were you on Paramount?
no, I was not.
Okay, sorry, my
No
bad.
golf watching on my accord. No, we were just basically had a lazy weekend. Nothing real exciting. to
Well, you
report.
did something together with your wife that since our
well,
last.
So my birthday was Wednesday,
Yay!
Happy
Happy
birthday.
birthday
and
to you.
we
Happy birthday.
my wife brought up a
to
good
you.
idea. I had been talking about getting a
Happy
tattoo
birthday,
forever.
dear Scott.
But can you do it with a Minnesota accent?
with a Minnesota salad. Anyway,
Wow. Look at him bringing out the accents.
I've been talking about getting a tattoo forever. I have one that is like 12 years ago, and everyone
I
knows
just
one.
want you to know that's older than 12.
That's fine.
When we met, you had the tattoo. I'm almost certain of it.
That's fine.
I'm
a long
almost
time ago.
certain.
But anyway,
Or you had it shortly after we met?
That's probably wow.
Oh, Daddy Jeep had a birthday too, so happy birthday
Yes,
to him.
Oh,
did.
yeah. Happy birthday, Rob.
He's a twinsies. Anyway, so she had this great idea that we should get matching ones and put them on our wrists so that when we hold hands, the tattoos are facing each other. I was like, that is good enough a reason for me to actually get off my duff and do this. Plus, I was able to one of the artists, up and coming artists, I know, they work out of a good establishment, and I was able to just easily text back and forth and say, how much is this? All this kind of questions. It was reasonably priced. And I admitted when I was there, I was like, I am cheap. This is why I don't have more artwork, because I don't want to be like, yeah, I've got $2,000 on this arm.
Wow, shots fired.
So I was able to do that. So other fun thing I did do on Saturday is our brother Joel had shown interest in riding in the 36, and we had a beautiful day. And so I messaged him, and actually it was Sunday morning. I messaged him and
I heard all about it.
Hey, it's a beautiful day. Do you want to have a ride today? Of course, he was game. So went and picked him up, took a little ride, dropped him back off. But this is the funny part. On the way home, I'm looking at the mileage, and I realize it's going to be 666 miles with just a little bit more driving. So I had to do that. And I was like, I'm going to try to park it with that exact mileage. But I miscalculated, and it was actually rolled over to 67 as I pulled in the drive.
I love angel numbers. I love pattern numbers.
So that was funny. I was like, this car was like, no, I will not have the 666 on my odometer all winter long.
Right. Oh,
So-
that's funny. And you know what I thought of you? Because I did catch word that, you took Brother Joel out, and I just thought, what a cool thing that we get to share with people, right?
100%.
I mean, not just even through the podcast, which I think is one of the things that makes this podcast so authentic and enjoyable. But anytime we get to share a unique piece of ourselves, you know what I
Yes.
mean? That's why the podcast is us sharing, personal and professional things.
Oh, and he
the
said,
car is this.
he said, oh, thank you. I was like, well, the best part of owning one of these is when somebody shows interest to partake in that interest,
Yes.
give someone a ride or to talk to someone about it, because you're stoking that fire for them.
And I think that's a unique thing about the Jeep market, because I do think hot rodders oftentimes do give the ride, right? You say that, but not always. Oftentimes
No.
it's a very recluse. I built this. This is my piece of
Yes.
artwork. This is my toy.
Why are you interested?
Yeah,
thing. Yeah.
right. It's almost I hate to say it, but almost a little chip on the shoulder ish,
Yes.
And to some of those people's insecurities, I think that, as you've mentioned at shows, all this hard work, blood, sweat, tears, and sacrifices you put in this car, and all too often at hot rod shows, you got a guy who wants to jab you and bring you down in the process. And so,
100%.
well, you want to go for a ride with me because you want to nitpick something, right?
Yep.
Which is an old school auto mentality, which I think happens sometimes in the Jeep market, but not
Yeah.
always. Because what I would say, I think the really cool thing about the Jeep market is a trail ride or parade, there's always somebody willing to have you jump in.
It's more of a community centric, we all succeed or we all fail kind of scenario.
Yeah, no person left behind on the trail.
Yes.
Isn't that an interesting concept about, and I thought about that, you giving him a ride, and I thought, hey, that's so cool that he has the opportunity to do that with you and that you have the opportunity to share that with him. But how often that doesn't happen in the car community, but happens all the time in the Jeep community. Oh, hey, I got an extra seat. Does anybody want to go with me?
Yes.
All the time in the Jeep community, social events, parades, meet and greets, toy drives, whatever, or even trail rides. Super cool stuff.
So what about you?
Well, so the reason I am Ray Charles' twin throughout this particular airing of I Speak Jeep, I had a dream actualized since I was a little kid, and I always, I tell this story, and I will try and keep it sort of brief, but when I needed glasses, I was a 10, 11, 12, somewhere in there. It was challenging. I didn't really like my glasses. I was a pretty active kid. I then, because it was such a big deal to me, I disliked my glasses so much, I wanted to wear contacts, but I just was not somebody who took to contacts easily. And so my eye doctor growing up, and who's still today, he always tells a story about this kid who showed up for a year and a half, and every couple of days would come in after school and poke himself in the eye and try and put contacts in. And that was me. I would come in consistently trying to put these contacts in, and he tells the story to try and encourage other people, because eventually I taught myself how to wear contacts. And I'm not sure what that says about my personality, that I'm willing to poke myself in the eye for a year and a half
not
and
give up
not
easy.
give up, But, so then, fast forward, 20 some years, and same eye doctor started going back to me, said, hey, you're a good candidate for LASIK. I really thought the boat had sailed. I thought the ship was gone, and I said, I didn't know that. I'd love to try. I noodled on it for about a year and a half. And recently my wife really was very supportive and said, hey, have at it. There's some things that through the startup of the business, I just had not done for myself. And she said, let's do it. You know what I mean? Have at it. And she supported me and said, let's try this. So I went in, and of course, in anything Neil Simpson, it's 0 to 100 as fast and hard as possible. And so I did my consultation, and I was like, that's cool. They were like, we can get you booked in a few months. I said, well, that's cool, but it's not really my style. I'd like in sooner. I don't want to be recovering during the holidays or in the depths of winter when, the snow and the ice and all that kind of stuff, And they said, well, it's unconventional. Well, ring a ding ding. That's Neil Simpson. And but in 2.5 weeks, what we're going to do is we're going to do your pre-op on a Monday. We're going to do your surgery on a Wednesday. We're going to do your post-op on a Wednesday or Tuesday. Yeah, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And I said, well, sounds great to me, not knowing anything else because I'm too dumb to have been more thorough in that approach. So I showed up for the pre-op, which was extenuating several hours of poking and prodding and testing. And I was LASIK, right? And they're like, everything that I read about LASIK, and Jeffrey, you had it years ago, was oftentimes you go in for the procedure. It's a little, there's some discomfort in the procedure, but realistically, within 24 to 48 hours,
you're great.
You're great. Yeah. That's what everybody has said for years.
Yep.
And I was like, that's cool, Sounds great. But no, I like to do everything the hard way. Makes a better story for our listeners.
Yeah.
So as the poking and prodding of day one of the pre-op kind of came to a close, they started to throw around this 3-letter acronym PRK more and more. And I was like, well, that's cool, but that's not what I was here for. They said, yeah, but that's what you qualify for. And I was like, well, what is PRK? I heard you mention it, but obviously since I wasn't caring about it then, I didn't pay any attention. And they said, well, it's what the military has approved. And many law enforcement and kind of your high intensity athletes all prefer PRK. And I said, well, why is that? They said it's been around longer and the results are more of a predictable outcome. And I said, oh, okay, that sounds great to me. So why doesn't everybody do PRK? And they said, it's going to hurt more. Yep. You're going to recover. Your recovery is going to be longer, and you are more susceptible to infection and stress.
And by the way, instead of just removing the cornea and putting it back, we're going to melt it off with acid.
We're going to melt it off with a chemical bath. Yeah. And I said, you're going to do what? You said, yeah, we're going to remove the front of your eyeball. Both of them, not one, both.
And this is where most people will be like,
I'm
good.
Electively, I'm out. Now, the military, up until very recently, hasn't given you a choice. So if you want corrective laser eye surgery through the military and them to pay for it, they only pay from PRK up until very recently, is what I understand.
But Neil, of course, is like, sweets, sign me up.
Sign me up.
I have no idea what I'm doing right now, but I'm going to do this.
You told me I should do it. I'm going to do it.
I'm going to survive. I'm a survivor. Yeah. Me and Jeffrey the cockroach. We'll be here after the apocalypse, right? So we go in for the pre-op. She says, be here at 8:30. You're on the table by 9:30. It moved. Bam, bam, bam. Obviously you're awake for the whole procedure,
which is another reason why I'd be like, I'm good. Thanks.
I just, I absolutely and the kind of the chief nurse character who kind of is over administrating over it, she knew that I was kind of getting a little anxious or nervous, and they have a name for the turtle. It's a Stuffy, and they were like, he's definitely a candidate for Mr. Snuggles the turtle or something like that. So I literally had this procedure. I didn't tell you guys, and I did the procedure double hugging this stuffy turtle the whole time, holding on for dear life. As you know, and they use numbing agents. And they insert these cups into your eye, into the socket to keep
Third
everything.
reason, I would be like, nope.
To keep everything open, and like I said, you watch it. My wife took video of it. She knew my family would be interested in seeing. It's pretty graphic. Nobody really wants to see that, but it was really interesting. But I'm on the mends. I'm on the recovery, of course. My own thick-headedness thought I was going to be, 100% and back to
The next day.
because I was still doing LASIK stuff in my brain. And then I went in for the post-op on Friday, and I thought they were going to be taking out they put these clear bandages on my eyes, and I thought it was going to be coming off because they're kind of irritating. And they were like, oh no, like this doctor that I'm seeing, she says, in like the 3 years that I've been here, I've only taken one person's off in 3 years. She was like, so are you bold enough to be number 2? No, nope. I guess not. I learned my lesson. I will listen to your appropriate recommendations.